Matt and I got married after college and, finishing up a little bit of college. And I always just wanted to be a mom. It was just one of my things. I'm going to finish school, get a job, be a mom. I had this all planned out, and we just feel like God kind of laughed at us, that the plan didn't go the way I thought. After 3 or 4 years of marriage and not being able to conceive, we started looking at infertility treatments. And we worked on that for a few years, and we had a stopping point. We knew that, once we get to this and it doesn't work, then we're just done. It was extremely hard, and I sympathize with all of you ladies who are having to go through this. That I just had such a strong desire to be a mom. I could not figure out why God was not blessing me in that way. And it took me several years to get to the point of being willing to give up my desire to give birth to a child, and for me to accept adoption. My husband was more for adoption from the get-go. I think he had not very much tolerance for the emotional roller coaster that we as women go through. And really, very early on, he was just like, let's adopt. It was perfectly logical to him. We were married 9 years with no children before we started this program that you guys are in. We finished our classes, submitted everything in December, January, and Amy called us in March and said that a birth mother had chosen us. So it was a very short wait for us. And when we met our birth mother, she was 6 months pregnant. So we had time just to build a relationship with her. And we went out of our way to try to establish that trust and just that relationship with her, because we wanted this to work out so badly. We were able to go to sonogram with her and a couple other doctor's appointments with her, and her doctor knew the situation, and he'd been through it before and was very understanding both ways. We had a get to know you barbecue at our house, and we invited her and all of her family, and they got to meet our extended family. And we just took that time again just to work on our relationship and help her feel comfortable with the decisions she had made. So Mason was born in March. Our birth mom was 17 years old. Her mom called us on a Sunday morning and said, Miranda's water broke, we're going to the hospital. And we had about an hour drive, so we hurried and got ready, packed everything, and drove. And when we got there, we were just getting ready to walk into her room. And we greeted her family. We were just getting ready to walk into her room. And the nurse came towards us, and she's like, nope, you're not going to be able to go in there. We got to take her to the OR. So we just got to kind of wave at her. And they took her into the OR, and literally within an hour and a half of us being at the hospital, Mason was born. The nurses, all of the staff on the birthing center, they all knew the situation. And one of them had talked to me a little bit before Mason was born, and she said, I'm going to bring the baby out, and you'll come with me to the nursery, and we'll do the first bath and measurements and all of that. Okay. So we were sitting in the waiting room with her family. I guess I should say the birth father at this point was just denying that this was his child. He didn't want anything to do with the birth mom or this baby. So we were just dealing with her family. We were sitting in the waiting room for them, or with them, and we were just 20 feet from the OR doors, and we could hear a baby cry. And me and the other ladies that were waiting, we all rushed to the door, and we're like, oh, you know, he's born. We can hear him crying. And the nurse walked out with Mason in her arms, and she just walked right up to me and put him in my arms. And I'm just completely speechless, and just holding this perfect little baby and crying. And her family is just surrounding us saying, you know, oh, he's so cute, and he looks perfect, and, you know, all these great things. And I'm just standing there like in total disbelief that somebody did this for me, that somebody put this little child in my arms and said, I want you to be his mom. The nurse, she came up and put her arm around me and started guiding me toward the nursery because I couldn't move. And as we were walking away, the birth grandma started just wailing, just a horrible, sorrowful cry, and I can still hear it. And I didn't want to keep walking. I wanted to go back to her and let her have her grandchild. And that nurse, thankfully, was thinking more clearly than I was, and she just kept leading me down to the nursery. It was just such a huge emotional just feeling that someone loved this child enough and they cared about me enough to put this baby in my arms. And it still is hard for me to understand how these amazing birth mothers do this. The staff at the birthing center, they treated Matt and I like we were the parents from the get-go. We had our own room at the birthing center, which was on a complete opposite end from the birth mom. And Mason was in our room. We were the ones that got the steak dinner. And the first night, the second night in the birthing center, we had to call Amy. The birth mom, like I said, she was 17, and she had some of her friends coming in and talking to her other friends who were teens and had given birth and kept their children, and they came in and talked to her and tried to talk her out of allowing us to adopt. So, we called Amy. We're like, what do we do? And it was so hard. And one of the nurses that was there, she came in to comfort me. She had been through this process herself, and it was just a godsend to have her also. Mason, the nurses treated us like he was our child at that time, but legally he wasn't, and the birth mom could have him. She just had to say it. So it's a very vulnerable time in there, but it was worth it for us just to put ourselves out there. The birth grandma made all the friends leave and just talked again with her daughter, and got her to realize why she had made this decision in the first place, and that this really was the best thing. And I think it was just she was just overwhelmed by emotions, and then her friends influencing her after she calmed down and some of the emotions of the process were gone. Then she obviously allowed us then to take Mason home. We were home about a week, and the birth grandma and the birth mom were going to come to court here in Dodge to relinquish their rights. Is that what it's called? Right? And the birth father, the birth father needs to acknowledge also his rights, or that he's relinquishing his rights. And if he doesn't, then you post it in the paper, right? And anyway, we didn't want to go through all that, and especially the birth grandma didn't want her daughter to have to deal with the possibility of him coming back or whatnot. So the birth grandma went to the birth father's house, I think drug him by his ear into her car, and he went to court with them. So the three of them went to court, got everything finalized, and then they came to our house for lunch. And we fed him, we just visited, and that was the last time we saw or heard from the birth father. The birth mom, she and her family would come to visit very often at first, which we welcomed. It was probably a couple times a month for a little while, and it just slowly went to one time a month, or one time every other month. And Mason is 8 years old now, and we see them on birthdays, and usually at Christmas, but not always. And when they want to see Mason, they don't try to tell us how to parent, or they don't tell us, what we're doing wrong or anything. They just want to see that he is happy and healthy and taken care of. I guess I should say also, as the visits got less and less, I was getting concerned that maybe we had done something wrong to upset her. And I called Amy again, and I'm like, she doesn't want to see us anymore. What did we do? And Amy said that usually the birth parents are ready to cut off, the contact earlier than the adoptive parents, which I didn't think was right, but it's true. I'll let him fill in the gaps, but let me just say that, we had waited 9 years. We adopted Mason, and had him home. I went back to work full time, and found out about 2 months after Mason was born, I was pregnant. And so I gave birth to a little girl in March, and she was 5 weeks early because I was having trouble with my blood pressure. And so we have 9.5 months between our two kids. And they don't know life without each other. And I was actually a little nervous telling our birth mother about it, just not sure how she would react. But her and her family were very excited that Mason was going to have a sibling. I guess the other thing I wanted to say, it seems hard to put yourself out there and to have these visits and stuff after the child's born. But for us, we felt like it was the least we could do for this birth mom, because she just gave us the most amazing, unselfish gift that anybody could ever give to us. And we felt like we just wanted to give something back, and the visits and keeping in contact and just pursuing that relationship, maintaining that relationship is one way that we can, partly give a gift back to her. So Mason is 8 years old now. We're starting to get into some of the hard questions. He doesn't really understand everything, real well. His birth mom got married almost 3 years ago, and she has a stepson, and she has a child with her husband. And Mason still isn't figuring out. He asked, why did she keep that baby and not me? and is this my birth sister? You know, is that my birth brother? And just, we can still give him pretty simple answers, and he's okay with that for now, but we're just getting to the point of the hard questions, I think.
I had a question, if you don't mind. First, thank you for sharing your story. We really appreciate it. I was wondering how Mason reacted when his birth mother came over to visit, especially as an infant and as he was growing up, how he reacted and if he had different emotions throughout his ages as he grew up.
Well, it's a funny question. I just talked to Amy again this week. You know, when he was an infant, he didn't know, you know, any different. As a toddler, he didn't know any different. The birth grandmother and the birth great-grandmother are very interactive with Mason, and they, you know, they talk to him, they'll play with him, they have a, you know, relationship with him. The birth mother, who is now 24, she, I'm not sure. She likes to see Mason, but she doesn't really talk with him. She doesn't interact with him. She, like, doesn't hug him. I mean, when we're with her, it's like she just wants to see him. And I think part of that is that she, you know, was young. She still is a fairly immature girl, I think, for her age. And I think she just doesn't know how to handle her emotions. So because she's a little, like, standoffish, I guess, to Mason, he doesn't really know how to react right now. He still wants to see her and wants to see that family, because he understands, you know, where he came from. But there's not like a bond or anything as of now.
Thank you.
I guess just to fill in a little background, I didn't know this all growing up, but my dad was adopted as an infant, and I never knew any different. They never said anything, but as we started going through this process, you know, it came to light. And so my grandpa and grandma have a picture that they put, I don't know if it was in, they didn't do a book, but they had to send one to the state. And so when we did our book, when we put it together, we got a black and white of our picture, and so we have one of us and one of them, so it's kind of, but yeah, but it's exactly 50 years difference in the years, but I never really had a problem with adoption. I don't know why. I guess maybe that's part of the reason why, but it always seems like in couples, even some of the ones that we help later, it's always one of them is accepted it, and the other one's kind of dragging their feet maybe. And it took Marsha quite a while to come around to the idea, okay, let's do this and go. But so from that standpoint, you know, it just takes some time to let the other person get to where you're at. But I had a list of things I was gonna fill in. But, one of the things I wanted to mention, we have some friends that are getting ready to adopt, not necessarily through open adoption, but the guy's really struggling. He wants to know, okay, how's it gonna, this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen. He wants to know everything, every step of the way. And you know, I keep trying to tell him that it doesn't matter if you know every step. It's not always gonna happen like that, or it's not gonna be the same for everybody. And he's slowly getting there, but they're gonna have, they're looking at twins, and it's a little different scenario. But one of the things, the reasons that we wanted to do open adoption is we also wanted to help the birth mother through her life too. My dad, it's also a generational difference, but my dad when we were going through this, I asked him if he ever had any interest in finding his birth parents, because that's one of our questions is, will Mason ever want to go back, or will he ever want to know this or that? And he was adamant that he did not want to know anything about his birth mom and dad. That was just in his generation. My grandma and grandpa raised him, and that was who his parents were. So as we started going through this, all those questions come up. Well, what if when Mason gets to be 8, he decides, well, I don't like you, Mom, I'm going to stay with my birth mother. And we've had those comments. He gets to the point where he gets mad and he just said, well, you're not my mom and dad. And those are the words you never want to hear, but they do come. And kids aren't really aware of, Mason may be a little bit behind his sister, and even though she's younger, of understanding some of this. And so it's just taking time and sitting down and answering those questions honestly. And the more that they know, the more they'll come to realize and feel comfortable with that. But, she fit in pretty well.
You guys are pros now.
Yeah, well, sometimes after a while
Right.
you forget some of the questions that they're wanting to know. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. But
I will say too that I mentioned that the birth mom's family, they were excited about us having a daughter, and they really do treat Maya just like they treat Mason. I mean, she gets gifts on her birthday. They come to her birthday party too, and she gets presents at Christmas. And it's the same thing with both of our families. Like, Mason is our child just as much as Maya is our child, and they just get treated the same. Nobody makes any distinction, or there's no difference.